through this extraordinary period of change, isn't it? And AT&T has been, a huge evangelist for that change and a real leader in quite an unprecedented way for a service provider or telco. Let me ask a big question to begin with. Why has AT&T been so aggressive about transforming its network with a technology like virtualization? You're on the record with some very aggressive timelines around that. 30% virtualization by the end of this year, 70% by 2020. Those are extremely ambitious goals, and last I heard you were doing well with that. Why be so aggressive about deploying virtualization?
Survival. I think that our industry needs to change as rapidly as our customers and a lot of our non-traditional competitors are changing. And having myself developed the trade in Silicon Valley and not growing up in here in this industry, it gave me the perspective that speed was not only something that was advantageous, it was an absolute necessity. But I'll also remind you that those numbers you mentioned earlier are just the wide area network. In our traditionally thought of as IT environment, which we don't have anymore, but our target architecture there, we're already 60% in the cloud, and by the end of this year we'll be at 80%. So we're marching to the cloud in every dimension of everything we do as fast as we can.
Well, the cloud is certainly the future, isn't it? And it's becoming ubiquitous. Do you think your enterprise customers are ready for the cloudification of everything? Is it causing them some anxiety?
Well, no, not at all. They're saying go fast. They'll be deliberate about how they adopt and where they try it and how they do things, but there's no, you look at network on demand, which is a virtualization capability, it's the fastest adopted service we've had. We're up over 450 enterprise customers that have already deployed, so we're moving very quickly, and I think the customers are not at all hesitant. They view it entirely as advantageous.
Are there any risks in moving as quickly as you are?
There's risks in staying in bed in the morning. So there risks are out there all over the place. Sure. You have cultural, you have where the economy is, you have customer adoption. And so we're trying to be deliberate. I think if you look at our program overall, half of the things we do are internally for efficiency. And that business case for efficiency, it's about moving packets. There's no adoption rates and ARPUs and all those things to just do things smarter. So we're taking about half of our activity and doing things internally, and then we're trying to balance that with about half of the things that are the customer-facing activities. And so when you have both things going simultaneously, your case doesn't fall under the weight of adoption or things in the marketplace that aren't going effectively for you. And we have the ability to shift between doing more projects that are internally focused, that have business cases that are designed around efficiency than those that are revolve around revenue. So we're balancing them based on where the marketplace is.
As I understand it, a lot of the work that you've done in virtualization has been around virtualizing or distributing the mobile core. First of all, is that accurate? And
no.
No?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. I guess I've been...
I'm teasing you. No. That's the stuff you see externally. So when you talk about we have 14 million of our customers right now operating on a virtualized core, that's a number that you attach to. But last year we took 21 network functions and virtualized them. This year we'll do 86. Right. So just think about that as a growth rate. We'll do 4x this year what we did last year, and we're just going across the entire network.
So it's not... Okay.
Some seen, some unseen.
So it would be wrong of us, and I sense that we've over-focused on mobile core. It is really important
It's because what we do over here, right?
Yeah, it is. But your point is that, it's wrong to single it out because you're virtualizing everything.
Right.
Okay.
So we have successes every quarter, just some of them make for better stories than others.
Right, right. What about, I mean, can you give us some examples of other things that have been virtualized really successfully?
Take a feature like mobile call recording for the financial services industry. It was designed from software from the get-go. It was added as a feature, and you look at IMS. So not only is everything virtualized that we're doing, it also architecturally is all designed around big data abstraction, so we can use machine learning, and it's also always going to be designed around a software operational architecture as well. And so every feature we can is done, designed now from the get-go. So a feature like mobile call recording. But, you know, some of our greatest gains have been in the central office on the wireline side of the business. I mean, we're trying to transform everything that we do to software, and everything we do, about 80% of our activity level is still on things that one would put in the legacy category.
Are there any services or applications that you don't think are ready to be virtualized yet?
Well, I think that the most challenging stuff is on the access side, because in some respects you've already made a virtualization trade-off by where you put the nodes. But what we're finding is that if you challenge your thinking and say, where is the most effective place to put compute, then everything really is subject to change. So I think one of the big steps for us that was a big breakthrough is when we said, we're not going to try to take something we do and virtualize it and then as a next step move it to the cloud. What we said is, let's disintegrate all of these appliances so that we can get reuse on things. And so we fundamentally have re-architected virtually everything we're doing.
There's a couple of big trends coming up in technology right now which people are talking about, one of which is supposedly here now, IoT, and another one is 5G. I mean, thinking about it from an architectural point of view, it seems to me that you could end up with a communications environment which is sort of bifurcated or split between, you know, IoT requirements, which tend to be low speed, very low ARPU, not even ARPU really, it's like, you know, revenue per sensor almost, and very high speed, you know, massive gigabit speed, high ARPU 5G subscribers. Can you really build a network which meets both of those sets of requirements? Can you build one network to do both things, I guess is my question.
Well, your question kind of mixed the business model with the technology with the the way I think about it, Stephen, is that we've got the IoT is about small chatty packets. It's control plane intensive, data plane light. And then we have video. Video is this giant monster coming down, and it's the opposite. It's control plane light and data plane heavy.
Right.
And I think if you look, those are the two ends of the spectrum on the usage side of things. And so one needs to go back and not only think about what's the next G that's going to solve that problem.
Right.
You have to go back and actually think about reopening those boxes that you deployed the last decade and make them behave and operate differently to accommodate. So whether that's a board change to get a separation of the control plane from the data plane, or whether it's, and how you think about managing that, or whether it is just deciding to scrap the old and buy the new. It's the fundamental question. And I think 5G is, from the ground up, contemplating this.
Yeah.
So that's a delightful thing. But our research teams have had to solve this problem in our embedded network, and we're not doing it by buying more appliances. And so we're working at how we scale that effectively. But for about 5 years ago, we said we have to design a network that, from the ground up, that's designed to deliver video.
Right.
And I think that's helped us a lot.
And you did that 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And has video tracked in the way that you expected it to 5 years ago, or is it, oh, we actually seeing more video now?
I think that our team has done a great job of forecasting trends, but we just don't know which application. So we're right on the trajectory that we thought we would be for video on our network. The fact that it shows up in the form of Facebook autoplay, or whether it shows up as Instagram, or whether it shows up as someone watching a movie for 30 minutes, we're horrible at picking those things on the network side. But we do have a pretty good ability to forecast the core trends that tell you what size car you need and how to get the train on the track.
Would it be fair to say that video is the most challenging application that you're having to deal with today in terms of network design and fulfillment?
Well, the operative word there is today. I think the answer to the today part is yes, but I got to tell you, in 2009 and 2010, the control plane was all we worried about. And so as adoption of smartphones in the U.S. exploded during the very early days of the iPhone, it was all of the action was on the control plane, because those things were chatty and the apps were talking to each other, and so our trauma shifted. But the point is, there's always something lurking out there to get you.
Yeah, I bet. So we're going to do some polls, but somebody stole my clicky thing, so I'm a bit stymied here. Does anybody know? Because I left it right here.
It's probably right over on the podium.
No. Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah, you see, that's why John's the chief strategy officer and I'm not, because he does things like identify where I've left my clicker. Thank you, John. All right, so you guys have got some nice remote devices there. And this is your instruction sheet, which is pretty foolproof, I think. The questions and options will be shown to you, so we'll do that. When instructed, but not before, so don't start randomly clicking buttons, otherwise everything will go horribly wrong. Your handset will light up, do not be alarmed. And then during the countdown, press that number. Okay, well, let's get on with this, shall we? Okay, here's our question. First question, we're doing two today. Which comms technology will have the greatest impact on service providers' businesses in the next decade? Well, we certainly have the right room to answer that question. And our options are 5G, network virtualization, cloud, platforms and services, white box networking, and IoT. So, brace for impact. Your device should suddenly light up now, and you should be clicking your button like a lunatic so we can see what you guys all think. Here we go. And the survey says, oh, it's behind me. All right. 6% for 5G. That's interesting. A lot of the people who've spent billions of dollars here at Mobile World Congress to brand themselves as 5G experts are going to be disappointed with that. Network virtualization, 29%. Cloud platforms and services, 44%. White box networking, 0%. That's interesting. And IoT, 21%. This is a very qualified room, so I'm not going to argue with anybody about it, though. I think you're all completely wrong about white box networking. Don't know what idiot put that on the survey. What do you think, John? Is this about right?
Well,
are you surprised?
It's apples and oranges. I would have, in a blind approach here, I probably would have said white box networking.
There you go.
Is the most important.
Me and John. Yeah, that's why we're up here.
Well, that's careful.
I don't have to be careful. I work for Light Reading.
When you look at these things, they all kind of dovetail together nicely. You can't get to white box networking unless you've done network virtualization. You can't do network virtualization unless you've marched down the path of pulling cloud platforms and services. So let me tell you our specific journey. We went into the IT environment. We got very aggressive in moving to the cloud, so we did 3. So 3 should be the biggest bar here because it's step 1. Once you do that, then you say, okay, well, now I have the courage inside the data center. Let's go in the central office and do it. So then you go to item 2 there and you say, okay, now I'm going to virtualize the network. And so you start by virtualizing the network, and then you deal with performance and latency and all those things that make your team say, no, I'm not going to do it. It won't work. And then when you finish those 2, then the big prize is now you jump to number 4. And you say, I want both of those things. I want it to be invisible, whether it's a data center or a central office. I want all of the stuff on a standard hardware package. Now, you're not going to get it down to one standard, but you might have 4 templates, maybe 6 templates. Those are the things we're debating now. You don't want it to be one per, which is what we've been buying for the last umpty-ump decades. So the big prize in the business case is in 4, but you can't get there unless you start with 3, step to 2, go to 4, and then all of a sudden 1 and 5 don't seem like such a big deal.
That makes
because
sense.
those get to be things you
Yep.
def on top. They're just services that sit on top of this architecture.
And that's what you mean by, we're mixing our metaphors a little bit. It's apples and oranges, really. So the 3 in the middle are the fundamentals, right? That's where you're building the infrastructure which handles everything which you can throw at it.
That's where the platforms, that's right.
Yeah, whether it was a 5G or in the future,
Start in
something
the
else.
start in the data center. The whole world's moving that way. It's not just the industry. Earn your stripes, learn your scars, figure out how things work, have your debates, figure out where culture problems sit, learn business cases, move to 2, get 2 done in a logical fashion, stay internal before you go external, keep your customers out of the mix until you get good at it. Once that's done, then go for the big prize, which is number 4, which says, and for us, this is the year. Last year, you look at white box networking, we built out 74 zones. This year, we're going to go up to 105 zones.
What do you mean by a zone?
I mean a white box networking node
Right.
in our network. So last year we built 74 of those. This year we'll go up to 105, and we're still debating. It might be 108, but
Right.
but
it's a
rounding error. But then 2 and 3 doesn't matter whether it's an IT application or a network function. They all land on the same hardware. And this is the year everything starts to land on our integrated cloud. The number 4, we gave a name. We call it the integrated cloud, AIC, AT&T Integrated Cloud. And what's integrated about it is it doesn't matter whether it's 3 or 2, whether it's network or support systems, they land on the same architecture.
And what is the actual hardware that you're using? Is it something that you develop yourself, or is it just off-the-shelf something?
We tried all kinds of things. We tried to build our own. We looked at what was out there in open source, and we came up with, I would say, a hybrid that takes advantage of a lot of things that are out there. It's not custom at all. It'll be all off the shelf. We'll put that stuff out to bid every quarter. We'll just say we need so many of these.
Because there's a lot of it.
We'll do a reverse auction, but it's big. Yeah, it's a big thing. Yeah.
You see, it's interesting to me because the media and the analysts are all focused on 2 and 3 here. And we decided to do a conference in California last year on white box networking. I was expecting about 60 people to turn up, and 350 turned up. So actually, I think service providers understand how important it is, but it's something which the analysts and the media seem to have not quite gotten their head around
There's
yet.
so much information.
It's not as hot.
Yeah, there's so much information in this slide here, these responses, I should say, that are instructive of exactly where things are. You must get 3 done first. You must gain the experience. You must figure out what your process, how your processes are going to work, how your people are going to do this, and. But I think from an industry traditional perspective, non-technologists, sure, it's going to be about number 1, because number 1 is about what's going to hit the customers. It's the big news, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's why this show will be centered around 5G, but all the technologists walking around are going to be trying to figure out 3, 2, 4.
Really interesting. Let's move to a sort of a more of a business type question. What do you say to people who say, oh, John, the future's going to be a big cloud. Amazon's got a really big cloud, and they're selling, timeshares on it. if AT&T is to survive, don't you have to compete with Amazon's cloud?
Well, if you decompose a cloud into compute, storage, and networking, our strength is in networking. Compute and storage are on a decline curve for the cost and so on that's just extraordinary. So to buy and resell compute and storage is not something that's central to our business model. What we want to own is the software that turns that into a platform and brings it alive. And we want to be reasonably indifferent to where that's geographically located. But the most critical thing is it has to be secure. So security is where you determine, is it one of those internet-based public clouds? Is it a private cloud? But what we're seeing from customers is it surely will end up being a hybrid cloud environment.
I was listening to James McQuivey's presentation before, and I thought it raised an interesting point about, how are you designing the network? Are you designing it from the point of view of what we know to be important in network design, things like security and reliability, or are you designing it in terms of listening to what the consumer wants? I mean, how much does AT&T, what does AT&T do to listen to what the consumer wants or to sense trends in their usage and design the network to meet their needs? How are you doing that?
Well, I think it's a push-pull system. And I think that, to say that customers don't know what they want, so build it for them, is one extreme. The other extreme is listen to them and build exactly what they want. And neither one is the right answer because they won't always know the art of the possible. And so it's a push-pull system where marketing and the customer pulls us, and then technologically we have to adopt things and sometimes take a leapfrog to figure out what the new art of the possible is. And so we within the enterprise segment, the last 3 years, we've been working very closely with our customers to make sure that we knew what it would take to adopt network on demand. And so this is probably the first time we feel like we got it exactly right because we understand how they're going to operationalize it on the customer end. What additional things would make it easier for them? What makes their business case better? And so I think, on the enterprise side, you feel great. If you go on the consumer side and you're a ubiquitous mass market provider, it's a lot more challenging. So it really does get down to features. And so there's the principles of our architecture drive our organization. So it must be open. It must be API driven. It must be secure. And if you can't make those hurdles, you can't do it. So those foundational principles allow us to build platforms that you can innovate on top of. And so it doesn't matter to me whether the marketing team wants to build something or go partner with someone. I just tell them, look, the APIs are pointing out. We'll either build or partner or however you want to do it. And so the architectural decisions that are made are independent of the customer, and they have to provide maximum flexibility to hit your network in any way that marketing or the customers choose.
I mean, in terms of working out what the customer wants, are you using a lot of analytics and sort of pulling a lot of data out of the big data, as they say?
If you look at our enterprise today, we have about 2 exabytes of data that we store. About 500 petabytes of that, or roughly a quarter, is addressable. And it's in our big data environment and moving. And so everything we're doing now is big data. So when we made our 5G announcement a week and a half ago, the big question is why now? What's the timing? That technology and all technologies we will not adopt until we know how software-defined networking fits in and how data analytics enable it. And then when we get comfortable that the triangle of any technology, software-defined networking and data analytics, when that triangle is complete, then we adopt the technology. Until then, we don't.
That's really interesting. How important is the transformation of your central offices to everything that you're doing now in terms of reinventing the network?
Well, last year when we said we were going to take the wide area network and do 75% by 2020, you can't get there without taking a bunch of your legacy stuff.
Right.
So that target, depending on how knowledgeable you are, looks either mild, why not go to 100, or crazy aggressive if you think, oh my goodness, in order to get there, you have to do all of the central office transformation, all that kind of stuff. And so, that we have to address everything in the central office if we're going to make that 75% target. But I'll remind you, in that chart that's still shown there with those, when we first took a look at the IT environment, based on where our mindset was, we thought we could get to 30% virtualized. And now we're talking about 98% white box, cloud, fully cloud. So it's a crazy evolution, and I suspect we're going to see the same thing on the customer-facing wide area network.
One of the really interesting things that AT&T is doing at the moment is retraining its staff. I mean, that's a huge task when you've got over 250,000 employees. How is it going? And what happens when you bump up against staff who don't want to, re-educate themselves? And also, I guess I would ask you, what are you retraining them in?
Well, we don't think of them as training because it doesn't emote enough how enormous the task is. We call it reskilling. So what we've done is we've taken I'll just take technology, for instance. We had 250 roles, jobs, and we narrowed that down to 80, but we widened the jobs. We changed all of our HR systems that if you're not current on your skills, then you can't get the top performance rating. You can't get the compensation increase. And so we raised the bar that says that only part of your job performance is based on how you're doing your job. A portion of it is allocated in every way, performance rating, compensation, into your future skilling. And so for those, the 80-plus roles, we've developed an entire curriculum. And so you can go from anywhere to anywhere. So if you find that you're a programmer and you want to become a big data scientist, you might have hundreds of hours of reskilling, whereas if you're an outside plant engineer that has an undergraduate degree in math, it might be a shorter journey. Right. And so what we're trying to do is empower people to opt in, pick their own journey, and get there. So the second part of the question, how are we doing? We have had over 2 million course registrations. We have had tens of thousands of people that have earned badges. We have thousands now that have earned nano degrees, and we're getting our first graduates through online degree programs that are full master's degrees. And so I would say that this is sweeping in a very, very profound way. And so then third part of your question, how do you deal with those who aren't going to opt in? Those who don't opt in de facto have opted out. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to match them to the legacy stuff that will sunset. So if you're late in your career and you think, I'm not going to go through all this stuff, the greatest thing about our employees at AT&T is our company's heritage is 140 years. Many of these people are second or third generation employees of the company, and so they do the right thing. And so a lot of situations, I get emails from people that say, I'm only going to stay for 3 years, and I'm in the new stuff. Move me over to the legacy environment and give my job to someone who's putting the time into the skill pivot, and then I'll just naturally sunset with the legacy technology.
Right. I mean, it sounds like you have to really nuance the trajectory of your employees because, you can't. A lot of them are still union, right? So you can't just get rid of them.
Yeah. I spend as much time on the
people.
Yeah, the people transition as I do on the technology architecture.
Yeah, really interesting. We're going to do another quick poll. I don't know how we're doing for time because I don't have my countdown thing up here, but
we're well over.
Doing? Well, good. That's the way I like it. All right, here we go. I've got 2 more really important questions after this, so we'll bang through this. What's the number one barrier to implementing virtualization in 2016? Lots of different options here, so you're only allowed to pick one, I think. I don't think we're doing multiple choice. I'm not going to read them out to you. They're all pretty obvious ones. Here goes the countdown. If you had to take a guess, John, what would you think people... You're going to say number 1, aren't you?
No, 8.
8? There you go. Well, that also ties up with what we were saying before, doesn't it? And, yeah, okay, well, it's a bit of a split. I mean, I guess security is always a perennial, isn't it? Management and orchestration is something which light reading and heavy reading is very focused on at the moment, so I'm not surprised. But you would have said number 8 still.
Yeah, but again, the wisdom of the room is that where you are in your journey determines. And if I didn't have confidence in one, I wouldn't begin the program.
Right.
As you start to get into the program, you realize that number 3 is the hardest thing here. This is the biggest software project AT&T has ever undertaken. The architecture of this is horribly complex. And so we're debating now, is this something we should push out on the open standards? Should we, because everybody needs to solve this problem if you're going to do a mass scale thing. But for us, it's the biggest thing we're doing. It's the hardest thing we're doing. And it's probably the most sophisticated thing we've ever done. And then once you sort of gain confidence in one and you have a program together for 3, then how fast you go is determined by number 8. Mm-hmm. So if you had asked me to pick 3, I'd have picked 1, 3, and 8. And if you'd asked me which one is the most important to the room, I would have said 1 and 3. And if you asked me where it is for us, it's 8.
Cool. Thank you for giving us, everybody here, such incredibly candid answers. I thought that was really interesting. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.